All right, welcome this week to the Project Mercury Alumni Association Alumni Spotlight. Today we have John Reeves. He's going to talk to us about his experience. So first of all, we really appreciate you giving your time up, John, to do this and talk about Project Mercury, what you've done, what you went through, in the background. But before I go into your background, I would actually rather let you introduce yourself and explain what you learned from Project Mercury, who you are, what you've done, why you did it, just the whole. Give me a full rundown real quick before we kick this off. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Paul. I appreciate you having me on this podcast. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm more than happy and so stoked about this. But my name is John Reeves. Been in the military for 16 years. Actually, the vast majority of that, 15 years and 7 months, but who's counting, was in the Air Force. And I just recently commissioned in the Navy. I found out about Project Mercury through Paul, who's a huge innovation advocate. Brought on a couple of us. We did a jumpstart, and then we went and actually did the cohort, which was a great experience. And then from there, did multiple innovation launches, essentially. We did a Project Lavoy. There was the Katie Cup that we assisted with as well. And then finally, we launched Samurai Spark, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But in the innovation space for the last, maybe 3 years now at this point. And yeah, it's been a great experience.
So you mentioned some things on there that you did. You talked about Project Lavoy, Katie Cup, Samurai Spark. Can you walk through your role in all of those, and what was the most memorable experience from the cohorts you went through, both as a participant and, as you said, launching as a coach throughout the program?
Yeah, so I had this idea when I was stationed at Kadena Air Base, going through exercises and everything like that. And by the way, I knew nothing about innovation. I knew it was like a word people brought up, but I was like, I'm not an innovator. First of all, I'm not very smart. I'm not creating. I thought, I got to create and make new things like an engineer. But I was at some exercises, and I was a lab tech by trade at the time, and during the exercise, we had providers coming to us asking for blood products, and we didn't have any blood products. And so at that point, we realized that those patients that they would have otherwise been able to save would then essentially expire, because there's nothing we could do to essentially replenish the blood that they've lost. And that's when it really kind of a light bulb went off in my head. It's like, we got to do something about this, because this is preventable death, right? We can save their lives at the point of injury if we had the capability. And so that's where I started thinking about, like, what could we do to prevent these people from dying when we could otherwise save them. And there's something we got to do. And so that's when I started coming up with the idea of figuring a way to collect blood from personnel on the ground, and then transfuse it. Essentially, they call it like arm to arm or whatever, if you want to call it that. Transfuse it in the field to those patients. And that's when I linked up with Jet, who was working at Shogun Spark, which is the innovation cell there at Kadena. And he was like, what ideas? He's like, what is this? I was like, oh, this is a blood transfusion kit, because I had basically a kit that I kind of piecemealed together, and from basically a transfusion kit that we had from the Navy. And I opened it up, and I was removing things and adding things. And he was like, what is this? And he was like, well, I feel like we need to be able to transfuse blood in the field. We can't do that here. Because of this exercise, all these people that we could have saved, they otherwise passed away. He's like, I like this idea. And then next thing you know, we are in this Project Mercury jumpstart that I didn't even know what I was getting into, right? So Paul, you kind of got us into it, being a coach for numerous cohorts. Innovation mindset got me, Jet, who's a dental lab tech, and Jeff Johnston, who is a dentist essentially, right? And got us together to work on this blood product, this blood initiative. So we went to the jumpstart, and that's where it's a lot of information all at once, but it's where I really learned a lot about innovation just from the jump. So when I eventually went to the cohort, I had a basic idea of what I was getting myself into, but my brain wasn't wired properly to be able to fully understand, because one thing about innovation is you think so much differently when you're in the military. You think, I have a task, I need to get it done as quickly as possible because someone's telling me to do it, instead of working your way and enjoying the journey to then develop. Yeah, you're going to fail a couple times and develop the best possible product to get to the best possible outcome, right? Most of the time we're just trying to be like, I got to get to an outcome. This happened, let's make a checklist, right? You immediately come to a solution instead of working your way through the problem. And it's actually enjoyable. Like, it's actually fun when you're failing, you're going back to the drawing board, you're putting everything up on the wall, you're looking at it, what can we do here? Thinking outside the box, as you mentioned, throwing a grenade in the box, blowing it up, thinking differently. And so it was hard for me to change my mindset. So when I went to the cohort, the face-to-face cohort, it was rough. Like the first week when you're there face-to-face, I was like, what am I doing? Right? What did I get myself into? And you hear that from a lot of the students, right? What did I get myself into? This doesn't make any sense. And that's because that's not how traditionally the military operates. But we took what we learned from Project Mercury and applied it essentially directly to Project Lavoy, and essentially built it into this thing that now has spread across PACAF. And we got a lot of support. We ended up being an Air Force Spark Tank finalist. We got the People's Choice Award for the most votes. And a lot of that was because of what we learned from Project Mercury, directly applying it to our innovation idea. And building teams, right? So, Project Mercury talks about team building, getting the right people in the right spots. Like, you need your reds, the people who are gonna, like, hey, these are the standards. We need to make sure we're meeting the standards. You need the green who are coming up with all these ideas and everything like that. You need the blue who are pushing everything forward. You need the yellow who are collaborating, who are bringing in people like, hey, I know this nurse, so that's what we're doing. Like, I know this nurse who's interested in this. Let's bring her in. So now we have a nurse expert. Hey, I know I have this flight doc. They we're at the PJs. Hey, let's bring them in. So collaboration, bringing in those individuals to support, because one thing I learned is in innovation, it's very difficult to go at it alone. Very difficult. If I was alone, this would have died in that office. In my little baggie that I had with a bunch of random stuff in it, it would have gone. I don't think it would have gone anywhere had Jet Nestle not come in, had you not put us in for Project Mercury Jumpstart, got Jeff on board, who's a prosthodontist, but has innovation mindset, who just can get stuff done. And you need people like that, right? Even though none of us were doctors or, anything like that, or specialists in blood banking, we still were able to create this amazing innovation through this education piece and through essentially sheer grit and determination.
So you mentioned you went through this, you went some hiccups, you learned a lot as a trainee going through the course. What about, you mentioned that you came back and you did coaching for multiple different cohorts. Now, having learned the course, gone through it, applied it, what other aspects or learning did you get from being a coach on the team? Now having to basically guide these students, as you said, who are like, I hate this. I don't know what this is. This is the wrong methodology. What did I get myself into? What did you take from what you went through and applied it to guiding others through the innovation space? Because that's usually where a lot of people struggles, that once you go through it, you're like, I'm done. I never want to do that again. But what made you want to go back and, eat more from that painful soup?
Like I said, the process, once you understand it, it's enjoyable. And one of my favorite things was when my team that I coached finally understood the whole process of Project Mercury, and a light bulb went off. And then they started coming up with, because you start thinking very linear initially, right? Oh, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, we're not allowed to do that. Or, so you start limiting yourself automatically, right? But once they started, I was like, hey, what about, I started doing like crazy stuff, because I saw like, Ethan, do this, you do this. You just start saying crazy stuff that's like, what? That kind of like makes people, second guess your sanity. But it opens the doors to more, like, to wider thinking. It opens up your apertures, right? And when I saw my team finally start to be like, what if we did this? I know like technically like it's used for this, but however, what if we took, so essentially they took a a missile, essentially, right? A glide bomb, and filled it with supplies, because we're like, how do we get supplies if we can't send heavies over into contested areas? Well, we could use fighter jets with glide bombs, right? And that's something that initially people, they were like, there's no way they wouldn't use fighter jets. I'm like, why not? Right? Like, what? Who's saying you can't? Right? So it's just like, once we started saying why not, right? Then things started opening up, and they started coming up with really cool ideas. And that's when it was I felt like I succeeded as a coach, because anyone could be like, take something that they see online and be like, oh yeah, we're just going to use, I'm going to innovate and I'm going to use this drone thing. Okay. I mean, that's vanilla. Like, innovation shouldn't be vanilla and it should be exciting, right? When you're talking, it should be kind of like, I don't know if this is going to work. Right. So that's kind of like how it should be, but let's try it. And if it works, wow, dude, we just struck gold. If it doesn't, it's, hey, back to the drawing board. How can we make this work? It's kind of like when I was doing, we had to pitch to the Air Force blood program, right? And it was kind of a hard no. You're not going to do this on campus. You're not going to do arm-to-arm transfusions in the Air Force on medical campus. And I was pretty distraught. I was like, this sucks. Like, we are getting no support. Like, this is going to die before it even gets off the ground. Um, and it was Jet, and having a conversation with you afterwards, you and Jet and Jeff, and Jet was like, you know what she did? She gave me the left and the right boundaries, and I'm going to play in the middle. And so that's what innovation kind of does. It's like, all right, I know where I can experiment and everything like that. So what we did is we took it off campus, and we did it anyway because we were allowed to do that, right? So it's just like, instead of just like, oh, that's it, we can't do anymore, you look for other options. And so that's what innovation does. It's like, it really opens up your apertures and makes you think differently.
No, 100%. So let's kind of build upon that. You said Project Mercury makes you think differently. You went through the course, you taught some cohorts and coached. What's what did your career path take after the Project Mercury? You mentioned Samurai Sparks and Shogun Spark. What was next? Kind of give me an overview of what happened next for your brain afterwards, and as far as how you tackled problems and looked at things, as a lab technician, but also as a member of the military.
One of the big things, I mean, in healthcare, you have a lot of limitations, right? There's a lot. You have a lot of accreditation agencies and things like, there's checklists and things, you have to meet certain standards. But that doesn't mean you can't do things differently to get the same result, do things more efficiently. One of the big things now I ask in my career is, if we get a no, it's kind of like a sales thing, right? It's kind of like I feel like I used car sales, but it's like, how do we get to yes? Right? Okay, we got a no here. How do we get to yes? We want to stop doing something. That's another thing, is, what can we stop doing? And you mentioned that. Okay, it's always like, what can we add? What can we keep adding? In today's military, we're not looking to just add more crud on our plate. We're looking to be more efficient, right? What can we stop doing? So that's another thing I brought in is, all right, why are we doing this? Who's saying we have to do this? Can we stop doing it? And what happens if we do stop doing it? Let's try stop doing it, right? Because a lot of times these things that we're doing, it was a knee-jerk reaction because something happened one time and some leader was like, oh, that's not going to happen on my watch again. We're doing this now. But there was no real innovation, no solution to the problem done. It was just someone put up a roadblock now, and it's making everyone's lives more difficult. So in those instances, you can use the innovative mindset to make things more efficient, to stop doing things, to try things out. In the military, it's scary to fail, right? Everyone says like, oh yeah, it's okay to fail. Is it though, right? Depends who your leadership is. There's that. Depends what the mission is. Some missions are essentially no fail, right? But when you're doing your day-to-day job, try something out. Let your team know or your leadership know, is it okay if I try this? And if they give you the green light, go for it. And if you fail, okay. Main things that you tried, and try to find another path. Try to have that innovative mindset to understand that it is okay to fail, and that's part of the process. You're not going to get it right the first time. And if you do, wow, fantastic. But 99% of the time, you're 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 uh, you're refining and refining and refining and refining and refining, right, until you get to where you want to be. But that's part of the process. It's part of probably the most enjoyable thing to see, even with Project Lavoy, the initial kit that we had, and then the kit that we ended up with once we met with Commander Weir and the Marines and the corpsmen there as they were going through Project Valkyrie, and when we combined our ideas. We had the best of both kits combined into one essentially joint kit that had everything that we felt needed it based off of feedback from our medics in the Air Force, our SOFMEs in the Air Force, their corpsmen in the Navy, and what we felt would created. I mean, that was over. I mean, how long did we work on? It was like years of development and constant. For me, you can ask Jet. For me, it's constant worry that we're going to get shut down. But that's me. I'm a warrior, right? But that's why I had other people in my corner who were different than me to fill my gaps, right? To fill the gaps I had in my mind and the way I thought. But yeah.
So one thing I want to ask upon is, as you've gone through this, what framework or one thing that from the Project Mercury cohort we talked about it that you were on the virtual one, you went into the face to face. What tool do you use a lot now, ranging from the bar napkin, the 5 whys, all the different processes that Project Mercury teaches you? What's one, if you could think about one tool that you still use to this day that you apply?
Use 5 whys. I use 5 whys for almost everything now. Whenever something comes up, I write an email, 5 whys, I throw it in there. I think that is one. It's easy for people to understand that aren't innovative. Like it's easy for everyone to understand. Another thing is I've used this once already, where it's like, all right, we need ideas. I want you guys to just shoot me all of your ideas. It's kind of like the sticky note on the whiteboard. Just put all your ideas. I don't care how crazy it is. And I ask the youngest people that are doing the job. Yes, the old people like me, we're not boots on the ground doing the stuff. We don't know what's working truly and what's not working. We just know the job's getting done, but are they suffering in silence? I mean, maybe. But how do we get there? So it's just like, all right, we need to 400 shots on goal. Just start throwing it on there, and send me ideas of how we can make things better. And it's another thing. It's like, what can we stop doing? What can we start doing? Crazy ideas, something that we just want to try, that you thought about, you want to try, and let's see what we can make happen. And some will work, some won't work. Some maybe we have been tried before, and there's data proving that it doesn't. But let's give it a shot. So that's another thing, is just allowing people to be creative, and not stifling ideas. That's the biggest thing, is not telling people that's not going to work. That's a very common thing, right? Like, you say something and someone immediately feels the need to say, that's not going to work. How do you know? Like, I mean, are you just saying it because you think it's not going to work? Or do you know for sure that this process that this person has thought up, or this idea, is not going to work? So you're stifling innovation when you do that. And so that's the biggest thing because it's almost habitual to some people, where you're like, that's stupid. So I've really prevented myself from saying that. Instead say, okay, can you elaborate more on that? Or, okay, can you kind of break it down for me in an email, so I can better understand like where you're coming from, to see if we can apply this. And so enabling that sort of mindset in your work center really helps build innovation rather than kind of stifling it.
I'm glad to hear that you're still applying a lot of it in your duty section and with people that you're charged with leading, but you're incorporating them into it, not basically coming from the leader down mindset approach to it. Now, I'm going to throw a little curveball at you right here. You've talked about how you apply innovation to your job, to those you work with. Have you applied any of it to being at home with the wife and the kids? Has it A, one worked, or B, have you had to eat some failure cake in the process?
Man, that's a great question. It's funny because you don't really think about it at home when it just as equally applies. You know what I mean? I can't say that I truly have. The one thing I have been better about though is what I said before is saying no to things when I don't really know if it'll work or not. Um, Especially like primarily in my marriage. You could take a lot of that stuff and apply it to your marriage. And a big thing was being non-combative with your significant other's ideas. You can ask, lately she's been, since then actually, she was saying like, you've been so much better about not just saying no to things and being okay with things that occur because we tried something or whatever it might be. And that's not my initial, that's not how my personality usually is. Usually I'm like, oh, and instead now I'm a little more relaxed when it comes to that and be like, it's okay. How can we how can we take that and still make something of it? Like, does it have to be a negative experience? Like, can it be something that we learn from? Um, and so that makes things a lot better when you go through day-to-day life, especially at home with your wife and your kids. Instead of getting upset about something, you could be like, this is a great opportunity. Yeah, we failed in this, and now we're taking whatever happened away from it, and we're learning, and we're better now. So
Okay. So I know you're also a big paintballer. As you've gone through this process, have you looked at the field of battle, if we call it that way, on the paintball field differently because of the innovation and how you've had to step back and look at things from a different lens instead of just go 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 go? Sometimes step back and say, well, maybe we need to look at it this way, or instead of full run this way, we got to do this.
with paintball, I love to do just crazy things. It's so much so paintball is something I really enjoy. And to do the same thing over and over again, like I tell my teammates, it's eventually people catch on. So you have to be innovative because if you keep doing the same thing, they know where you're going. They know which we call lanes where you're shooting. Um, they know you're placed out because someone's watching you. So you have to do things differently. You have to catch people off guard. And the only way to do that is to kind of think outside the box and be like, what would they not expect? What would someone not do? Right. And then I'd be like, all right, man, like, I know this is kind of crazy because that's kind of innovation, right? This is kind of crazy, but let's send this person all the way up to the halfway mark of the field on the left hand side, right off the break is when the game starts. And it's either going to do one of two things. It's going to work out really, really well for us and it's going to be great, or it's going to fail miserably and we're going to lose. And now we know, hey, all right, that doesn't work. And typically you get very innovative when your back is against the wall, when you're losing and nothing what you're doing is working. You're like, all right, we got to do something different. What can we do to throw these guys off their game? What can we do to kind of put them on their heels? I always say, like, you want them always on their heels and not expecting what you're doing. Because a lot of times, like, you'll watch these videos of people going over the layout and they'll say, this is the best shot here, this is the best shot here. So everyone starts to do the same thing. Everybody starts to do the same thing. And the better players will win. But when you start to mix things in and do things differently and being unexpected is when you tend to get the upper hand. So you always want to keep them on their heels. You want to keep them guessing. Innovation definitely helps with that because they're like, what is that? Like, why would someone do that? And that's kind of an innovative mindset.
Think it's actually a perfect analogy for an innovation team as they go through. You hear that you must do it this way. This is the lane, as you call it, that you must attack through. But as a coach, as you were talking about guiding people through that, you see them kind of get stuck in their ways, is probably another way of looking at it. And they get stuck and they get that tunnel vision or the Clydesdale approach to a thing. I like how you said innovation made you look at things from a different point of view. And hey, let's just toss a crazy thing out there. I think that's imperative for those listening to hear that innovation isn't just set ways of doing things. You got to try weird things. You got to get outside that box. As you mentioned earlier, toss a grenade in the box and walk away. Look at it from a different point mindset. Um, Looking back on everything that you've seen and being part of Project Mercury, how do you see Project Mercury has influenced innovation and progress today, but in the DoD, DOW, the different services, civilian healthcare, all the different avenues that you're a part of? How do you see the legacy applying?
Um, I've seen so many amazing things come from Project Mercury. Um, Project Mercury brings together people from all walks of life, right? You'll have engineers with lab techs, with administrators, just brilliant people, and also people that just have good ideas. Bring them together to create these teams that develop something from nothing, essentially, in a matter of weeks. And so it kind of puts into perspective, look what we've done in however many weeks, right? What is it? Is it 9 weeks? The cohort, or is it
12 weeks. It's 12 weeks,
12?
4 months.
It's been a while.
It's
I need to
okay.
start coaching again. But look what you've done in 12 weeks. Now imagine if you applied this to a project you've been working on for months, for a year. What you can get done is incredible. And we've seen this across the DoW. We've seen this also with our NATO partners. So we've seen like entire conferences where the idea stemmed in the Project Mercury cohort, and now you have NATO members from all over coming together because of this idea that someone came up with. Right? So like things like that have huge impacts. Like so Project Mercury has had impacts all over the world at this point. I mean, they have footprints in Asia. I mean, we did training in Korea and Okinawa, and then I know they went to Singapore with the Singapore military. They're all over NATO. They do the NATO cohorts. So the impact is huge, and the vast majority. There are some outliers people that resist change, and there are going to be those people. It is what it is. But the vast majority get something out of it, and they take it back to their departments, and they take it back to their work centers, and they take it back to their host nations, whatever, or the not host nations, but the nations that they're from, and make incredible change because of this different thought process. Because they're not thinking like everybody else. I know it sounds like this magical thing. It's not. Like you got to put in work and you got to learn, and you have to flip the switch to think differently and prevent yourself from going back to your old way of thinking and wanting to say no, that doesn't make any sense or whatever it is. But yeah, there are tons and tons of examples across the world of how Project Mercury has made significant impact.
Hey, John, first I want to say thanks for giving the time to share your experience and reflect on Project Mercury, what you've done, where you're going forward with it, and how it's changed your life, looking at not only innovation, but just your day to day life within your sections, within the family life, as you've already pointed out, but also how it applies to paintball and how paintball kind of is innovation in a mindset, but it's kind of like fast paced. It's not a 12-week process, but it's still a lot of brain power that goes into it. So both your contributions, both during and after Project Mercury, are just phenomenal, inspiring. Putting things in place at Kadena, Okinawa, Osan, all these other locations you've had your fingerprints in. As you said, Project Mercury is a global phenomenon. Is probably the best way to put it. What would you say if you had the opportunity to talk to John Reeves back when you started Project Mercury, the virtual cohort, or to an individual out there who is looking at you on this video that's like, man, John Reeves sounds like me right now?
The biggest thing would be uh, try not to judge every little thing when it comes to innovation. When I first, I'll be honest, when I first started getting in the innovation space in Project Mercury, I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. It's innovation's a buzzword, right? It's not real because a lot of people were using that for like CPI. People are using throwing CPI and everything, continuous process improvement. But once I saw, I guess I would tell myself to be patient and to be consistent and to keep going. Don't give up. And because there were so many points where if I didn't have one of y'all, I think I would have given up on my project. I don't know if I would have made it to how far it made it without you guys there with me along the way throughout the entire thing. That's God's honest truth. Because I was second guessing myself constantly. Don't second guess yourself. Be confident, be okay with uncertainty, because in innovation, there's a lot of uncertainty. You don't know how things are going to play out. You don't know if it's going to work, but you don't know unless you try. So I think that's the biggest thing is, what did I always say? I think you told me this and I just started regurgitating it is, be uncomfortable or be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because man, I was so uncomfortable, especially that first week. And I was, first of all, like imposter syndrome like crazy. Don't have imposter syndrome. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a freaking genius. You just have to be someone who's inspired and who wants to make change and make things better. That's it. And then you can come up with something. And then you surround yourself with the really smart geniuses and things like that who can actually make your idea a reality. Because those people are out there. There's so many people that want to help. You're not alone in the innovation space. That's the best part, is the people you meet. I think it's a big thing. Like you will not imagine, you cannot imagine the people you will meet in this space. It is such an incredible experience to build that circle of innovators, of people that are just determined to do better and to make things better for those around them. It is an amazing experience. So I think that's the biggest takeaway I'd have, and the biggest thing I'd tell myself or someone who was interested in getting into this.
I think you've kind of like summarized your entire process through innovation, and I think very succinctly to your future, your past self, and to your future self. Once again, I want to say thank you for your time, John, doing this and participation, and hopefully you continue down the innovation space and keep pushing the boundary and shooting those balls down those lanes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul, for this opportunity. Looking forward to continuing this journey in innovation, as well as Project Mercury. Yeah, it has been a while, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And this is, even this interview is getting me inspired. So thank you.